to do this in Publisher 2013, but of course the techniques here will work in pretty much any version of Publisher. When you first start at Publisher, you're presented with what type of new publication do you want to do. You'll see several of the different page sizes as well as different templates for instance, photo albums and calendars. Now you can pretty much ignore all of those for this. What we want to do is just choose a blank 8.5 by 11. Now, 8.5 by 11 is going to be the printed size, and you have to remember that Publisher is typically geared towards actually printing documents out. If you're not really worried about the final printed size of the page, then we can always increase the page size to whatever you want. So, for instance, if we go into Page Design, and let's go into Size, and let's choose well, I'll tell you what, let's just do a Page Setup. And let's change this to a 40 by 50. And now, as you can see up here in the margins, we've got 0 to 40 inches, and then of course 0 to 50 inches on the vertical side. Now, you may also want to change the orientation, so we can also rotate this landscape, and notice now we're at 50 inches wide by 40 inches tall. But again, this is dealing with the printed size. The next thing we want to be able to do is deal with text boxes. So the way that we're going to do these family trees is using connected text boxes. So the first thing that we want to do is let's draw a text box. So we're going to make sure we're on the Insert menu. Let's go to Text Box. And when we do that, we get a set of crosshairs. Now I'm going to click and just drag a box, and I'm just kind of guesstimating the size here. Now you notice that it looks pretty small from right here. So this is where a handy shortcut key is going to come in. It's called F9. And the F9 key will do an instant zoom in or zoom out to your document. So if I hit F9 right now, that will zoom in close where I can actually see what's going on. Now notice I have my text box flashing here. And so I'm going to go into my text box tools just so that I have everything handy that I need. And we're going to start this off. So I'm going to type in my name first. And notice we're dealing with font size here. Now, I can't tell you what the correct font size is versus text box size versus total size of your document. This is one of those where you're going to have to design one, print it out or distribute it digitally, and just kind of play around and see how it's going to look. Now, in my opinion, probably 10 points going to be just a hair small. So I'm going to go ahead and change this. I'm going to go ahead and change it up to 12 point just for mine. And we're going to have my name in there. And now I'm going to take my text box here and I'm going to grab my resize handles. That's the handles in the corner. You see these resize handles all the way around it. I'm going to grab the one in the corner and click and hold, and I'm going to drag that up till I get the box about the size that I want. Now, if I click off of the box out into a blank area, notice the box goes away, but I can see the text. And as I mouse over it, I get a set of dashed lines, a marquee showing me kind of like an invisible outline of the box. Now obviously I'm going to want this box to have an outline because that would make things a little plainer, most likely in my chart. But again, it depends on how you want this to look. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and click on the box, and I'm going to go up here to my drawing tools, and let's go ahead and set a outline, or let's set an outline for the box. So I'm going to do shape outline, and let's set it to black, and we'll just do something easy. Now notice when I click off of it that I have a nice black outline around my box. Now of course you could do any color you want. You can even move down and add a little glow around it or whatever you want to do. It just depends on how complex you want to get with your box. So I'm going to leave mine as plain black. Now I want to go ahead and I'm going to center this text. So I'm going to click back into the text box so that I have my flashing I-beam cursor. Alright, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in my text box tools, and notice here that I can align my text top center. I can also align it horizontally and vertically as needed. Notice when I click there, that centers it from top to bottom of my box, and of course I'd also centered it left to right. So again, it just depends on how you want your box to look. Now I can also go in here and I can change the style of my text if necessary. I can change the font. So again, it really depends on how you want this to look. I'm going to keep it relatively simple. Now I'm going to take this box, and to save a little bit of time, I'm going to go ahead and use a copy and paste. So I'm going to select my box, and I'm going to use Control C on my keyboard in Windows, and then I'm going to click off of it, and I'm going to do Control V as in Victor, and that will actually paste a duplicate box. And notice as I click and hold, so what I want to do here is click on this box till I get the 4 pointing arrows, click and hold, and as I drag it away and line it up, notice that I get my little purple alignment lines, and that'll help keep things nice and neat. So I'm going to drag this over a little bit and release it. Now I'm going to click in here and we'll type in Gina's name, my wife. And so now I have duplicate boxes perfectly formatted to each other with my name and Gina's name. Now the next thing we want to do is drag out another box and start going down the row for our children. And so in this example, I'm going to again do a copy and paste, but what I'm actually going to do this time, I'm going to use another method. I'm going to select my box till I get my resize handles. Again, I'm clicking on the very edge with the 4 pointing arrow. I'm going to hold down the Control key, and I'm going to, when I hold down the Control key, notice I get the little plus sign beside my cursor arrow. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to drag down while holding the Control key. Again, I'm holding the Control key and clicking and dragging. And when I get to my general area I want to drop the box, I'm going to let go. And that's another way of doing a copy and paste. Again, I could have copied it and pasted it using Control C or Control V, or even my edit menu. In this case, I did a Control click and drag, which brings out a duplicate copy. So I'm going to start putting in some kids' names here. But one thing I want to do is I actually want to change the background fill color of this particular box, just to change it up a little bit. So I'm going to select my box. I'm going to go up here to my drawing tools, and let's go to Shape Fill, and let's just make it a real light gray color. And now I've got a nice light gray box to designate the children. Now again, it depends on how you want this to be. But now that I have this box done, I'm going to Control click or copy and paste and drag out another one. And I'm going to release it, and then I'm going to re-drag it here until I get my little purple alignment indicators, and that way the tops and the bottoms are nicely aligned. And so I'm going to click here and we'll type in Michael, and I'm going to grab one more, and I'm going to do Stephen. Now we need to connect these to us as parents. So I'm going to just space these out a little bit here. I'm going to drag me here, and we'll put Gina here. And now I need to do some connector lines to show how we're related. So the way that I do that is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click on my shapes, and I'm going to grab this connector elbow, this elbow arrow connector. And so when I do that, I get my set of crosshairs. So I want to click on the bottom edge of my first box, and I'm going to click and hold when I get the little crosshairs with the circle. I'm going to click and hold and drag down and go to the top center point of Jeremy. And notice if I click away, I have a nice arrow that will stay connected even if I move Jeremy's box around. He will stay connected. Alright, so I'm going to bring him back up and line him up. And I'm going to go back up here into my shapes, and I'm going to click on my arrow, and let's connect Michael over to me. So again, same thing. and then we'll connect Stephen over to me. Now, since I've got this arrow selected, notice it automatically puts me in my drawing tools, so I can just simply go over here and click on my connector. And again, I'm going to click and hold in the center bottom point of me and go over to the right, and I'm going to connect Stephen as well. Now, I also want to go ahead and connect Gina. I'm going to connect her to each of the three as well. And now, both of us are connected to the three boys. And again, notice that if I move me around, or if I move Gina around, we as the parents stay connected to the child boxes. Now again, I'm getting them a little out of whack here, but it's just to show you that they stay connected. So when I do this, I always want to make sure that I keep Gina and I lined up vertically so that our lines look like one single line coming in. And that's pretty much how you do it. Now, if I want to zoom back out, I'm going to use the zoom tool, or I could use the F9 key, and that would jump me back out. And notice, I've got this started on my main page. Now, this area out here outside of this is called the canvas. That's this area out here around my actual document. And this canvas area does not print. Even if you print it to a PDF, it doesn't show up in the PDF. And so what I can do is, as I create boxes and things that I like that I might be using over and over, alright, I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in a little bit, and again I could hit the F9 key or whatever. But I'm going to take Jeremy's box as an example, and I'm going to copy his and drag a copy of his out here, and I'm going to copy mine, and I'm going to drag it out here. So I've put them out here on the canvas and off of my document, and not actually on the document itself. Now, what I can do is I could just click in here and just rename this one to parent, and rename this one to child, and then that way, if I develop another set of parents or whatever, then I could simply copy this one because I've got it formatted like I want and drag it over. And that way you can keep individual shapes out here that you may use repeatedly in the document, where you can simply copy them from out here and paste them in. It really depends on how you want to do this. Now, let's take a look at a couple of other things. Let's say that I want to change the font color. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to change the font color for Gina. So I'm going to click her name. I'm going to go make sure I'm in text box tools. I'm going to go to text fill, and let's change her to red. And we'll go ahead and make hers bold. And now notice Gina's name is bold and red. Now I could go in and, for instance, I can click on her shape. I'm going to go to my drawing tools, and let's go to shape fill, and let's see what looks decent. That's kind of difficult with the red there, but I'm going to change her to a little bit of a yellow color. And now I've changed hers to yellow with red font, and of course I could do the same to mine, but this is just to show you a little bit of an example. Now, one thing about drawing or doing shapes on a publisher document, and this also applies to Word and Excel using the drawing tools, is that as you draw shapes, they are in layers. Think of it like stacking pieces of paper on a desk. And so the first thing that you draw is the thing closest to the desk. Everything after that would be stacked on top of it. So as you can see, if I take Stephen and drag him up here on top of me and Gina, notice that he is over the top of us because he was one of the last boxes that I drew. And so if I wanted to put him behind us, I would have to select his box and actually send him backwards and put him behind us. Now, as you can see right here, sometimes when you get into moving shapes around, see how I'm trying to click his box again, it can get a little confusing. Alright, see I can't actually, I'm having a difficult time actually grabbing his box to move him back where I want. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. But notice I keep getting my connector lines. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to solve that problem. I'm going to grab Gina's because I can grab hers, and I'm going to move her out of the way. Then I'm going to grab mine, move mine out of the way. Now I can easily come in here I'm going to zoom back out, and I can drag Stevens back over to where I want him, and then I can move Gina and myself back to where we need to be. So that's just to show you, if you accidentally click and get a box somewhere and you can't really grab it, grab something that you can and move it out of the way and then put him back. That's the advantage of using these connector lines, is they stay together. Okay, so once you have your document finished, then what do you do about distributing that document? Well, there are a couple of considerations. One, again, it depends on the printed size of your document. In this case, I'm still at a 40-inch by 50-inch page, so if somebody tries to actually print this on their printer, they're going to have 40 by 50-inch paper, or they're going to have to resize this and scale it down so small that they may not be able to see it. So that's a consideration. If you're going to be sending it strictly digitally as a PDF, then the page size doesn't matter unless the end user is going to print it as well. So you have to kind of keep all these things in mind. But in this case, I don't want to send somebody the publisher document because most likely they're not going to have publisher. You want to go ahead and most likely distribute this as either a PDF, that would be the preferred format, or you could save it as a TIFF or even a JPEG like a picture. But I would strongly suggest that you use the PDF format, and it's pretty easy to do. So I've zoomed out just to kind of show you the whole layout of the document here. But in Publisher 2013 and Office 365, we're going to go up to File, and you would think that you would want to use Share, and you can actually do it that way, but this is mainly for attaching to email and all that. So what I would actually recommend is go to Save As and choose the location that you want to save it. Let's go to, we're going to choose our drop down, choose PDF. I'm going to throw it out in my Documents folder, and we're going to hit Save. And presto. Now I'm going to take it and let's minimize Publisher out of the way. Let's go into our Documents, and there's our PDF publication. Now notice that the PDF is named with the same file name, which is a temporary name, as my publisher document. Now when I go in here and I go to File and Save As, or actually in this case I'm going to do an export. This is another way to do the same thing. So I'm going to do an export, and I'm going to tell it to create a PDF or XPS document. And again, I'm just doing the same thing. Notice it automatically brings up PDF. Now once I get my document like I want, I'm going to go ahead and let's save it. So I'm going to go to File, and let's go to Save As, and let's save it in our My Documents. Now if you're using Office 365, you could save it to SkyDrive and you have 25 gigs of free online storage space. But in this case, I'm going to just put it in My Documents, and I'm going to save this one as a publisher file. And I'm going to call it Rex's Tutorial, and I'm going to hit Save. Now if I close out of Publisher, notice that I have the PDF copy, and that's the important word, copy, but I also have the publisher file. I'm going to go in here and we'll throw something easy in here. Let's just draw a cube in here, just for whatever reason. Now I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to File, and let's go to Export, Create Pdf Xps. We're going to make sure it's a PDF file type. Notice it's calling it Rex's Tutorial now because that's the name of my publisher file now. And I hit Publish, and it's going to create the PDF. Now as I move over to my Documents folder, notice I have Rex's Tutorial.pdf. That open up, and now I've got a cube in the middle of the page along with our names. That's how you create a quick family tree using Publisher. The key points are: use the text box tool, use your font tools as well as the fill and shape controls for the text box itself, use the arrow connector lines, and also be aware of the actual size of the document, the actual paper size of that document. You can change that on the fly, but remember that the person who receives the PDF copy may need to print it, so you have to take that into consideration. Last thing, when you're sending this to someone, you are going to want to send them the PDF version, not the publisher. If you have any questions, send me an email.